Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Take 2 Minutes podcast. I'm your host and founder of Take2Minutes.org, Mark Fassel. Joining me this week is Katie Cooper. Katie is the founder and health coach at Katie Cooper Wellness and a healthcare professional with over 15 years of experience. After overcoming burnout, Katie is on a mission to help others reduce stress, find work-life balance, and so they have more energy and passion for their life. Katie also offers one-on-one coaching to offer simple, effective strategies to reduce stress and burnout. Katie, welcome to the show. It's great to have you on.
Thanks for having me.
So first off, I do love the idea around work-life balance. I think that's terribly important and something that anyone can fall victim to, for lack of better terms. And I know even myself, I struggle with that at times, and I always try to make time for personal and self-care. What's your take on finding a work-life balance?
Yeah, so I think this term work-life balance has kind of had a negative rap recently. You know, people are thinking, well, there's no way you can have work-life balance. And so I've been kind of reframing it for myself and my clients, where it's more of an awareness versus like this perfect balance where everything has equal time in your life, because that's not how life works, right? It ebbs and flows. Our responsibilities are always changing. And one week we have a lot on our plate work-wise, and other weeks it's a lot on our plate for our life responsibilities. And so it's more of figuring out how to make consistent time for yourself and the self-care like you talked about, and kind of make some boundaries and division between the time you spend at work and the time you spend outside of work, so that you can enjoy all aspects of your life. That's kind of my take on it there.
I like that. As we talked on, I think self-care is important. And within Take 2 Minutes, and even my team who helps market, we have a lot of self-care videos, because I do believe self-care is an important part of a work-life balance. And sometimes people have heard me say this in the past, self-care, some people feel like when they try to partake in self-care, they're being selfish or focusing on themselves. Whereas my take on it is that little bit of self-care can help you do better, even like for your relationships. So if you're worried about taking time away from your family, if you do take some time for self-care, your time with your family then is better quality time because you've taken a little time for yourself.
Exactly. And I also always tell people it doesn't have to be hours of self-care, right? It can be a 1-minute breathing exercise. It can be a 20-second hug that I love to share. You know, it doesn't have to take a lot of time to take care of yourself. And sometimes that self-care is like going to the doctor, you know, like making time for those doctor's appointments that we need, or, you know, following up with those routine checkups that sometimes we push off because we have so much on our plate.
Right. I think self-care, to what you're saying, can come in a lot of forms. And I've talked about a lot in many of these interviews, but as I think about it more, I was just talking to another gentleman on a previous call, and he frequently goes to concerts. When I say frequently, it's once every, 2 or 3 weeks. It's not every day or every week, but still, in my mind, that can be a form of self-care, because he's doing something he wants to do that he enjoys that's outside of work and outside of commitments.
Exactly. Yeah. I recently went to a concert, and I felt like on a high for like hours and days afterwards. I was like, oh, that was the best self-care, because it just came with me everywhere I went for the next week, you know?
But maybe we could say self-care is doing things outside of work and responsibilities as something you want to do, or you want to do to improve your personal self, which could be a definition of self-care.
Yeah, exactly.
So I jumped right into it there, and I really wanted to start with telling us more about your journey from experiencing burnout. Burnout is something that I also have interest in, and I've done a lot of research around and had a lot of input from others. I'd like to hear your experience with burnout and how that helped you to become a health coach.
Yeah. So a couple of years ago, during this big pandemic we all lived through, I think we all have some experiences that were positive and negative during that time. And I found at the time I was working in the healthcare industry and taking care of my patients in a very unknown situation for all of us. And also a mom of 2 girls and a partner to my husband. And I just got to this point where I had a ton of anxiety and fatigue. Like no amount of sleep would make me feel energized again. It was this just feeling of I couldn't really manage any of my responsibilities well, and I wasn't doing any of my roles the way I wanted to. You know, I couldn't really like live up to my own standards in that time. And so as it took me a while to identify what was happening. I kind of just was kind of going with it. You know, I'm stressed. It's a pandemic. And trying to heal myself with lots of naps and, you know, taking care of myself in that way. And then I figured out, oh, I think this is burnout. And everyone experiences burnout differently. So I think for each individual, it's a little different how that presents for you. But once I realized what that was, I kind of surrounded myself with a lot of support. So I went to therapy. I told my family what was going on, and they all kind of like chipped in to provide support that I needed to kind of allow myself time and space to heal. And then through that process, I had worked with a health coach years before, and I was always interested in coaching and learning more about health and why I should drink the green juice and eat a salad for lunch and do all these things I know I should be doing. So I decided to kind of invest in myself by enrolling in health coaching school, really just to keep myself accountable to the changes I needed to make. I didn't intend to become a coach, but kind of fell in love with it as I was learning more and practicing coaching. And now I've been lucky to coach hundreds of people and really see the transformation that can occur in the process.
I think your story about burnout is one many people can possibly relate to. Do you have any suggestions for people anywhere in that area? And I'm going to give you just a couple of examples. I don't think I'm looking for any one answer, but for people to recognize they're experiencing burnout or things they can do if they think they're experiencing burnout to help themselves.
Yeah, I think number one is, even if you're not sure if it's burnout or something else, is just to like reach out for support. Like in that moment, you're really not capable of healing yourself. Like you need people to help you. So whether that's going to your doctor to figure out is this a health issue? Is this stress? Is this burnout? Going to family members to help take things off your plate so that you can spend time taking care of yourself and kind of diving into it that way. That support aspect of it is super important to manage overcoming the burnout.
Good. And then you mentioned you started taking courses, I guess, on coaching. How many you've coached hundreds of people now? You said, tell me about the first few. Did you really just find that you loved it and you wanted to do more of it, or how did it come about more for you?
Yeah, I think being a healthcare provider, I do a lot of coaching, but I didn't realize I was doing that. So a lot of education with my patients to help them overcome illness and injuries. And then starting to work with people who weren't necessarily injured or ill, but really just wanting to proactively feel their best and kind of overcome, stress and find work-life balance. It was really fun to be on like the more proactive side of health and wellness. And also just seeing them come back week after week and share like, oh, I took care of myself this week. I did this. And to see them light up and see that transformation was just so empowering. I was like, I have to do more of this. This is really, really fun and engaging. I love it.
Something else, and you've touched on it a couple of times already. If anyone goes to Katie's website, which is katiecooperwellness.com, I see you have a lot of blogs and information about food and eating healthy. And we touched on this prior to recording, which is I'm a big advocate of eating right, and that helps your gut biome, which also helps your mental well-being. How about you expand on that for us a little bit and your thoughts around that?
Yeah, so I've been diving into this a little bit more as I learn more about the vagus nerve. And I don't know if you've talked a lot about the vagus nerve or learned about it, but the vagus nerve is this amazing nerve in our body that helps our body relax and go into the parasympathetic nervous system, which is our rest and digest side of our nervous system. And one of the ways that the vagus nerve interacts with the brain is through the gut. So if there are negative things happening in our digestive system, those negative signals are being sent to the brain saying something is wrong. And it introduces stress into our system. And so when we eat properly, when we fuel our body and eat the foods that are going to help prevent those illnesses, prevent issues in the gut microbiome and help it flourish, we're going to send positive signals to our brain through that vagus nerve and make things a lot happier and a lot less stress-free, hopefully.
And I'm not a dietitian. Ironically, I was speaking to one just yesterday, and she's going to probably be on our podcast soon. But ultimately, there's a lot of foods that are in a lot of, I would say, I guess, parts of foods or ingredients in foods that can negatively affect our gut biome, and people don't even realize it. And one of the easiest things to say is highly processed foods. Highly processed foods aren't good for our gut biome, but also things that are pretty common and popular these days, like alcohol, that largely kills the gut biome also. And alcohol is an interesting one because a lot of people do partake in that activity. Even I do, and I try to minimize my use of it. And I say use because it's not something we need. But instead, when you go out into social events, it's easy to have a drink. And those little things do destroy the gut biome to some degree, I believe. Do you agree with that?
I do agree with that. And I also think alcohol plays into our mental health as well, because it acts as a anxiety producing, stress building substance in our brain. Even though it feels calming and relaxing in the moment, we get this rebound effect the next day or week, and it could really mess up not just our gut microbiome, but also our mental health, which we're learning more and more is all connected anyway.
Correct. Yeah. And I think that's coming out a lot more with people being aware of how much your gut biome is connected to your mental health, and what you're eating, what you're taking in and putting in your body changes how you feel about things.
Yeah.
So you have even recipes out here. Is there something you really like to cook?
I love to convert, I don't know, things that people might think are boring, or, things I used to love in my childhood that maybe weren't very healthy, and make them healthier and super delicious. So I actually crave them. So I feel my best when I eat those foods. And so I try and make them super yummy, delicious, and also kid friendly, because I have 2 children who are a little picky.
Right.
So I'm always trying to find easy but delicious meals. And I love sweets. So I'm always looking for a good dessert that is also going to have some benefit with the sugar.
Yes. That's a challenge with sugar, but still.
Yeah.
That's good. So back to stress and burnout. Do you have any simple and what you found to be effective strategies you recommend to people for reducing stress and burnout? Both? That's either one or either or.
Yeah, I think, the primary driver of burnout is stress, for sure. So I'm always looking for easy ways to manage stress. And my tips for people are really at least once a day, making sure you're consciously turning off the stress response. So what happens is every stressor that we're presented with, and they're everywhere, just turn on the news. You can be stressed out the rest of the day.
Right.
Activate that stress response internally. And the brain actually turns on this response where it's protecting us from whatever threat is in front of us, whether it's an email or an actual physical, something that could physically harm us. And we have to tell the brain, it's okay, I'm safe now. And so my favorite way to do that is through movement. So going for a walk or a hike or swimming or stretching or yoga, whatever feels good for your body, even if you're only doing it 5-10 minutes in your day. If you're present with it and intentional with it, it will turn off that stress response in the body. And if we do that consistently every day, we're going to minimize the effects of that stress response being on consistently and getting stuck in what's called the stress cycle, where we can cause a lot of harm and lead us down to that burnout place.
I'll add to that. I think walking is great for individuals. And I had someone weeks, if not months ago on the podcast talking about it. And I think he had a great way of looking at it. Some people, for a magnitude of health reasons might not feel like they can walk around the block even or walk for a mile, but it's not so much about that. It's more about getting outside and maybe just walking to the end of your driveway day one and doing that repeatedly until you feel confident you could do that, and then take it a step further and go to the end of your block. But the goal is to get outside, do the activity to the capacity you can, and then build upon that until you feel more confident and have more ability to go further, ideally.
Exactly. And when that movement is hard, like let's say you have an injury and you can't get out the way that you want to, there are lots of other ways to turn off that stress response, like deep breathing. You can breathe for a minute. I mentioned the 20-second hug earlier. It's one of my favorites. There was a study that showed that within 20 seconds, if you're hugging someone that you trust and have affection towards, it will lower your heart rate, your blood pressure, and change your stress hormones in your body. And so like, it's amazing that it only takes 20 seconds to turn off that stress response, and it doesn't require much of anything.
That's interesting too, because if you think about it, at least I'm thinking about it, a 20-second hug is a long hug, but it's all in all a short amount of time. And once you get used to doing it, you probably achieve a lot from it. So to those who have the loved one or someone they can hug, instead of a quick little 3-second hug, maybe hold it for a little longer and reap more benefits from that.
Yeah, my husband will actually like count it out for me now. It's really funny. And around like 10 or 12 seconds, I can start my body feel like it's relaxing. My shoulders drop. And I'm like, oh, yes, I did need that.
Regarding walking and injuries, this is just a little story. It popped to my mind. I kind of want to share with listeners maybe. Because of injuries, your ability to exercise in any capacity can change. I don't think of myself as a person in bad shape. I do work out occasionally. I try to do yoga. I try to walk, but I had to drive for work-related purposes. And I think it was 10 hours total in the car over the course of 2 days. And when I got home, of all things, I squatted down to pet my dog. And when I did, my left knee gave out. My left knee was then in pain it was an extended amount of time. It was 6 or 8 weeks type thing. What I found out was after my knee hurt for a few days, because I was trying to compensate, my back started hurting. Well, all this can be fixed by certain exercises, but I was really unable to do the exercises because my knee wouldn't let me do them. So I couldn't correct my back pain because my knee hurt. I couldn't go for walks because my knee hurt. And so I was really in almost a downward spiral. How do I correct this? And what we talked about was, that's what I did. I just took small baby steps. I got up every day and spent just a few minutes trying to stretch my knee or stretch my back or do things every morning. And it was tedious for a while, but that helped repair it, and didn't happen overnight, right? It's not something that all of a sudden I stretched one day and my knee's better, my back's better. It took a couple weeks until they both started feeling better, but it was those small baby steps of doing something that helped to get to that point.
Exactly. Yeah. You got to take those little steps with anything in life, right? Any challenge, any time we're making changes, those little steps really do add up over time.
Yes. To your Instagram page, which people can find you on Katie Cooper Wellness within Instagram. I do it looks like you have a lot of webinars and I would call them events. Why don't you talk about those a little bit for us?
Yeah, I try and hold them every, couple months or so. They're free events, and we talk about different topics. My biggest topic that I love to talk about is stress, and ways that we can reduce stress, because that does lead into so many health issues long term. So a lot of the different webinars I do are around stress and how to manage it to improve your health and wellness. And so, yeah, those are all, I always shout those out on social media so people can sign up for them. And I love to educate. So it's a great way to get the word out.
Yeah. So check out Katie's Instagram page and maybe join one of her webinars. I'm bouncing around on topics here, and you had touched on breathing exercises earlier. Mm-hmm. And I have someone on my team, I'm going to call her out, Ashley. She almost gives me a hard time when I jump around on topics, but I forgot to mention on the breathing exercises that Take 2 Minutes has a whole library of breathing exercises that people can use. Do you have any favorites that you like as far as, because there's many different breathing exercises. I think we've got 20 in our library, but there's probably even more than 20. Are there ones that you like more than others?
I would say my favorite, and one that's become like a fan favorite with my clients, is the 4-7-8 breathing.
Yes.
I love that one if I wake up in the middle of the night and I'm having a hard time going back to sleep. And I especially like that one because it is quick. You only do like 4 rounds of it. And it's a little more complex with the countings. You breathe in for 4, hold for 7, breathe out for 8. So it really helps shut off the chatter in my mind versus like just regular, like deep breathing. My to-do list can keep running in my brain. So I need something a little more challenging, like the 4-7-8 breathing.
Nice. And so for anyone who didn't follow that, the idea of 4-7-8 is you breathe in for 4 seconds. So you're counting in your head by breathing in 1, 2, and almost for seconds, 3, 4. And then you hold that for 7 seconds. And then your exhale is 8 seconds, or double the time of your inhale is what happens. And you start over again. And ideally you do it for minutes, if not at least 20 rounds is my understanding.
Yeah.
Is there another one you like a lot besides 4-7-8?
My other favorite is probably box breathing because of that nice image. And again, I do 4 counts, inhale for 4 counts, hold for 4 counts, exhale for 4 counts, hold for 4 counts. And then in my head, I do 4 rounds of it because it's easy just to remember. It's a box with 4 sides. I hold everything for 4 and I do it 4 times.
And some of these, to what Katie was mentioning as far as helping you distract your brain from other thoughts that could be going on, is the idea of counting and keeping track on which iteration you're on keeps your mind busy and gets you to not be thinking about all your to-dos ideally. Or if you add a little bit of meditation practice into this, if you are doing the counting and you find yourself thinking about, oh, I got to go to the store, stop that thought and bring it back to the counting and focus on the counting. So you have the ability to stop those thoughts that you're wanting to get rid of to help yourself reduce the stress and focus more on the counting exercise, and just be aware of what you're thinking about and bringing it back to the counting.
Yeah, and like you said, like you sometimes you just got to keep bringing it back. It takes a lot of practice, and on those days where I'm really dysregulated, there's been a lot going on, it's harder to focus on it, and it takes me a little more effort to kind of bring back my awareness to what I'm doing in the moment.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I hit a button and I lost my place on our list of questions here. So the next one was, if you could share a success story from your coaching practice, maybe someone who you're able to help navigate out of burnout.
Yeah. So she's a good friend of mine as well. Someone I've worked with for a long time. And she manages a large team, and felt just this overwhelming sense that she needed to quit her job. That's how she felt in her burnout. And she loves her job. She loves her team. She loves what she does, but she just couldn't manage it anymore. She didn't feel like she was enjoying her time with her kids. She was always working and never really got a chance to kind of shut down and reset in her day. So over our time together, we started making, small shifts with, how she kind of set some boundaries with work, what time she turned off her computer, when she was on her work phone, things like that, making time to do things with her family. So she had just moved and used to be very spiritual. She would go to church a lot, and she hadn't figured out a routine for that. So she focused on making time to go to church with the family. Even if it was once a month, it was more than she had been doing. And as a result, she ended up, really dedicating more time to her kids. Like, she coached her son's baseball team. She took snowboarding lessons with them. And she really felt like she had better division in her day. So she had her work day, and then she had her time with her family, and she was able to actually focus on that and enjoy it. And her kids even said, like, Mom, you're so much, more interactive with us, and we love you being, here with us. And it was a really, really cool transformation to see.
Yeah, that's great, especially if your children recognize it. I mean, good for her to have that much of a change with even they're recognizing it.
Yeah, and I think one of the takeaways from her story and many others that I've worked with is sometimes we feel when we are burnout, we feel like I have to change my job. It's my job. And yes, there are definitely issues in the workplace and different industries that need to change to make work better for us. But even by changing your job, if you don't do the work to heal from the burnout, it's going to follow you wherever you go. And so I always tell people, like, don't quit your job yet. Maybe that is the path you need to take at some point, but let's do some work to heal from the burnout first. And then we can identify, is it the job, or do we need to make some shifts somewhere else? Or is the job okay? And you can manage if you're taking care of yourself and setting those boundaries.
Right. Jobs are very interesting. Even with Take 2 Minutes, I that's not my job. I have a full-time job, and I can contest as anyone can that jobs can definitely be challenging, and that's part of a job. You're working for someone else to achieve quite often their goals or the company's goals, and it can be challenging. And that's going back to our onset conversations where a work-life balance is important, because I mean, I don't want to discredit anyone's job. At the same time, they're paying you to perform a job. You need to take it seriously, but you need to be a balance, right? You can only take it so seriously. You can't make it your entire life or your whole entire being and expect to have a work-life balance. You have to create the work-life balance on your own, because your job will let you work as much as you want to. They're happy to have extra work, but at the same time, that's not going to be healthy for you.
Exactly. I think that was my mistake so I picked my career when I was in 7th grade. So I've been like in it for a long time. And so when I got out of college, I was like, yeah, I'm investing everything into this career. This is what I've wanted since 7th grade. And it definitely led me down the wrong path. I mean, I still love my work, but it took me a lot longer to learn how to set those boundaries and find that balance than it maybe would have otherwise.
Well, good for you for knowing what you wanted to do since 7th grade. That's phenomenal in itself. I had no clue what I wanted to do until much later in life. So 7th grade, you wanted to be in healthcare, or tell me, or was it a nurse specifically, or what did you want to be?
I'm an occupational therapist.
Okay, all right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that was a desire since 7th grade. Good for you.
Yeah, it's unusual. I've heard that many times.
Another detour on our conversation, just to tell a story, was I had no idea what I wanted to do. I started using computers at a young age. When I say young age, like 11 years old. And in college, my junior year, my counselor was like, you need to make a decision what you're going to do with your life. And I still had no idea. I was like, I don't know. I'm just doing what I'm told to do. And right now I'm in college because I think you're supposed to. And one day he said to me, he goes, you talk about computers a lot. And this was 1994, before the internet, before things were as computerized as they are now. But he said to me, you talk about computers a lot. Why don't you do that for a living? And my response back was, you mean someone would pay me for that? I had no idea that there was anything out there for computers besides me just playing with them on my spare time. So that was again, my junior year. So I was, gosh, I had to be around 20 years old, 21 years old before I had any idea what I wanted to do for a living. So 7th grade is a far cry from junior year in college. Good for you.
Thank you.
So we've talked about for stress reduction, breathing exercises and going for a walk. I'm going back to stress because you claimed you like to talk about stress. What else do you think can be talked about, or other ideas to reduce stress, or other thoughts? What else can we talk about with regards to stress?
Yeah, so I think another part of managing stress is socialization, right? So I think in our modern world, we are more insulated, more, disconnected. Even though we're all connected on the internet, it's not the same as like talking to somebody on the phone or in person or going out. And that socialization is another way that you can turn off that stress response, because to have like social conversation, chit chat with somebody, you cannot be in fight or flight and have that conversation easily. So it's another way to tell the brain, I'm safe. It's okay. We can rest now. And I've had that experience where, I'm an introvert. by nature. So I don't always like to push myself to go out and socialize. But I always find when I do, I actually feel so much better. I feel like I can vent about my day or just like have that connection with somebody, who's like-minded and enjoy that time, and make that division again between the work and the life. And it helps reduce that stress.
I actually love that because I think you and I are similar in that capacity. And the fact that when I do have to go out and do something, I quite often dread it or don't want to do it or try to find excuses in my head why I shouldn't do it. And I'll go through a whole process of trying to get out of it, sometimes just internally. But when I actually do it, I end up enjoying it. And I afterwards realize how much I'm glad I did it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you think socialization could be done on a virtual level though? Like, to some capacity, you and I are socializing right now on a Zoom call. We can see each other. I don't think it can be done as much non-visually, but what are your thoughts on like something like this?
Yeah, so I do think that you can do it virtually. I really truly believe cameras on is super important to get that nonverbal communication across. And I do a lot of group coaching where it is all virtual because I do it within my workplace where we're in 30 different states. So to have everybody on camera for part of our session is a great way to like connect with each other and to be able to have that socialization where we can't be in person. So it is a great way to get that socialization as long as the camera's on. I do think it can work.
You touched on something there that very much interested me. There's group sessions you do, but it's not just one-on-one?
Yeah, so I do some workplace wellness where we do group coaching sessions in order to kind of manage the stress within the workplace and find that balance, set those boundaries, things like that. I do those group sessions in that sense as well.
So is that quite often like a team within a company or is it different individuals from different companies? Tell us more about that.
So this is for one company and it's different team members from across the entire company that comes together. So I do it for leaders. So typically the leaders need kind of their own thing so that they can feel comfortable and vent in a safe place. And then, the team members need their own thing so that they also connect with each other on the similar level. So we do it a couple different ways.
So for those, in case anyone wants to partake in them, I still have questions. You recommend a separate group for leaders and a separate group for team members is what I'm hearing. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think in order for them to feel like they can be open and honest, if you were on a call with your boss, you might not want to share, what's going on personally. But if you're with your peers, you're more likely to open up and have that connection in a different way.
Okay. Is that something you do for people who aren't part of the same company? Like, do you offer, so let's go back to your webinars. You do these webinars every so often. Are the webinars ever camera on and people talking about things? Or are those more you presenting?
They are more me presenting, but we do have interactive parts of it, usually in the chat more than on camera, just because people tend to want to be in the chat when they don't know each other. But if I was doing like a group program where it was the same group of people over the course of several sessions, then it would be more camera on, at least for the first part of it when we were all discussing kind of how things were going.
Nice. I like this idea. That'd be, I think, great for a lot of companies. I think there are a lot of things like what you're offering here, and I'm going to go back to take 2 minutes, that a lot of companies could embrace and ideally get more productivity out of their employees. And this is funny because a company getting productivity out of their employees is important for the company. Obviously, we want to focus on a work-life balance for the employees also. So the whole conversation has two sides to it almost. But at the same time, I think both sides are important. I think for a company to have employees who are being productive is as important as the employees having a work-life balance. Both sides of that are very important in my mind.
Well, and you also retain them when you give them the resources and the ability to take care of themselves and have that balance, because they're going to want to stay in an environment where they're supported in that way too.
That's a great point you make there. And I do believe in that fully. If you have a team that's happy and wants to be there, they're going to stay longer, be more productive, and enjoy their time there while they're actually working. And that's what I always hope to accomplish with the teams I create. It's just that, as a team that feels like a team, feels like they're empowered to do things, enjoys their camaraderie with each other, and wants to be a part of the team. It's still, while not over stressing about how much they're working or how much they need to get done, and recognize that it'll get done in time. That's all important things I try to convey to my teams.
Exactly.
So we've talked about walks for stress reduction, self-care, which is a little bit more of a generic. You can do a lot of things for self-care. It could even be walks and breathing exercise. We talked about breathing exercises and socialization. I like the fact that socialization we touched on can be in person with friends who are around you, or virtual with camera on. What else around stress? I'm going to keep going back to the stress because you mentioned you like talking about it. So what else can we consider?
So when you think about socialization, laughter is also another way that you can turn off the stress response. Yes. And that can happen when you're socializing, but you can also get laughter just from like turning on a comedy special on your TV. Like, you don't have to necessarily go out for it. So you can combine it or do it separately. And I was thinking about about a year ago, I went to a comedy show. I had never been to one before, and I thought, oh, this might be fun. And so my husband and I went out with some friends, went to the comedy show. And as the show was going on and I was like starting to relax more, I got into it more. I was laughing more, and I could just kind of feel this weight lifting off my shoulders. And it was just really amazing. And so that was really great. And I was like, yeah, I can't go to a comedy show all the time. I don't have time for that. But there are plenty of comedians on Instagram. I can go watch a really funny 1-minute clip and get a good laugh out of it too. And again, it's just a great way to kind of incorporate it into the day to turn off that stress response in an easy, quick way.
The laughter is another one. I have a friend who is very interested in Take 2 Minutes, and she tries to help a lot with Take 2 Minutes. Her name is Wendy, and she has told me multiple times in our conversations over the course of 3, 4, 5, 6 years that she tries to belly laugh once a day. It's one of her goals every day is to belly laugh. And I think that's a great goal. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure how to tell people how to accomplish it. So I like your idea of looking for comedians on TikTok, Instagram, whatever you care to follow, and find ones you like and try to watch them once a day, because I do think laughter is a great medicine. And it goes really even to your whole conversation. It goes to how you can let the negatives in media, social media, paid media, whatever, you can let the negatives weigh on you. Whereas if you look for those positives, and this goes back to a quote I use quite often from Barbara Fredrickson, that the negatives scream at us, whereas the positives whisper. And the idea behind that is sometimes you got to find the positives. You got to find the laughter. You got to find what makes you happy. Whereas because the negatives are all over you, there's negatives all around you all the time. They're easy to find. So sometimes you got to look for those positives to help you get into a better mood in a less stressful environment. So laughter is another good one for stress reduction per Katie.
Yeah. Yeah. And you just triggered this thought in my mind with that quote. Like, when I think about, the positives, like, you really have to kind of reframe everything to get past the negatives of the day. It's so easy to see the negatives. And one of the ways that I do that is with gratitude. And like on the really hard days, the gratitude is just like that I'm going to bed. I'm going to go to sleep now. Or I had a good cup of coffee this morning. And then other days it's bigger, more exciting things, that happened in my life. And that's another way to turn off that stress response, because you're helping reframe the brain away from the stress of the day into the positives of the day, which is, another easy way to do that.
So I love talking about gratitude, and it's a topic I talk about often in many podcasts. And I think something else I mentioned, I'm going to talk more about gratitude, is sometimes people say, but they're concerned, or the pushback I get is I don't want to have fake positivity. And that's not the goal of gratitude. The goal of gratitude is to at least recognize things which you're grateful for. And going back to our quote of negative yells, positive whisper, if you start recognizing gratitude or making a point to recognize gratitude, and sometimes it takes you documenting it, which you can, buy a journal, which I had one around here somewhere. You can use Take 2 Minutes, however, but start documenting, getting a practice of writing down every day what you're grateful for. What happens is you start recognizing more things naturally. It's a natural priming that happens to you, where each day you'll walk around and go, oh, I'm grateful for this. I'm going to take note of it because I want to make sure I remember it. It doesn't mean it's fake positivity. It doesn't mean you're not going to have, I think you mentioned earlier in our conversation, ebbs and flows in life. There's going to be trouble. There's going to be work trouble. There's going to be personal. There's going to be difficulties in life. And it doesn't mean that the gratitude or the positivity should be overshadowing that. The point is, it still helps you to recognize things that are positive or things which you can be happy more naturally once you get into that habit.
Absolutely. And that's definitely been my experience with, because sometimes I'm good about practicing my gratitude and sometimes it falls off just like everything else in life. And when I do practice it, I see that shift in my own mindset, which is so helpful when we are faced with challenges, to see something positive in it, because there is always something that you can learn and grow from when you're faced with a challenge.
So with regards to burnout and stress, I'm going to talk about one activity that I personally love. And I love it because I've done a lot of research on it. A lot's been told to me about it from psychologists firsthand. And that is the 3 Good Things activity. It's built into Take 2 Minutes. And the idea behind it is, at the end of every day for just 15 days, it only takes 15 days, but at the end of each day before you go to bed, you're supposed to reflect in the day and think of 3 good things. And those 3 good things can be challenging at first. This goes back to priming and gratitude, because day one, if you haven't done a gratitude journaling practice, you don't practice gratitude journaling, day one, it's going to be hard to think of those 3 good things. Day 2, maybe it's a little bit easier because you recognize throughout the day, I got to take note of these things. By day 4, 5, and 6, it's coming a little more natural to you. But the idea behind it is, and what I've been told from the psychologists are, that if you do it for 15 days, it actually helps rewire the brain to recognize positivity throughout your day. And that rewiring of the brain, for lack of better terms, has a lasting effect on someone for up to 4 months past those 15 days. You just have to do it for 15 days consecutively it's kind of it's like anything you want to do to create a habit. Once you've done it, you've created a habit for 15 days. After 15 days, and that helps you. So it's a 3 Good Things exercise. And I think you kind of touched on that a couple times in your examples.
Yeah, I love that. And I always love research-backed strategies and tools like that. I use that in all of my practice as well. It's like, I love the research to show it's true. It works. I promise.
Yes.
And when we're looking at, making a new habit, forming a new practice, it is really hard for our brain to do that, because the brain wants to revert to the easier thing, the thing that's going to take less effort and less energy, which is whatever routine and patterns we've been doing. And that's why it's so hard to get off the couch and exercise when we've been sitting on the couch for a year, because it's easier to do that, And so I love that idea of the 15 days. And then you get the benefit of it for 4 months. Like, you can stick with something for 15 days. That's doable. That's great.
And the data was offered to me by Dr. Brian Sexton. Anyone can probably look him up. He's out of Duke University. He had a grant, ironically, to research resilience and workplace burnout in healthcare professionals. And what he learned from, I don't want to misquote, but I think he had something like 40,000 participants go through this program. And what he learned was that 15-day was the key. You could do 3 good things for longer than 15 days, but through his 40,000 participants, he learned 15 days was the magic number to make that habit stick with you and have that 4-month lasting effect. If you did it longer than 15 days, you weren't going to get more benefit. It doesn't mean it wasn't not going to hurt you to do it more than 15 days, but 15 days was the magic number that made it last for so long.
Oh, I'm definitely going to use that with some clients going forward. That's a great tool.
Good. And if you care to, point them towards Take 2 Minutes then, because it's built into Take 2 Minutes. It's one of those things within Take 2 Minutes. as with all of our activities, you can set a timer or a reminder for what time of day you want to do it. And with 3 Good Things, it's usually an evening activity. So you set up, hypothetically, if you go to bed at 9 o'clock, set it up for 7:30. So you get the reminder at 7:30. You can click on the link at 7:45, 8, whatever time you're ready to do it. But the reminder's there and waiting for you. So you can click on the link. It takes you to a form, enter your things, and then you're good. And again, you can tell your clients that day one may be difficult. You may have to really think for a few minutes as to what was positive in that day. But the point of that is to make you think about positives and recognize them. They could be more simple, like you said. I think you gave a couple examples when you have a day that's more challenging, that your positive or your gratitude isn't as robust as other days.
Exactly. Yeah. But there's always something we can find positive.
Always something. Yes. And some people even, I'm sorry to talk about Take 2 Minutes with you so much, but I have a gratitude challenge in Take 2 Minutes. And it's one of those things where I found a lot of people want to gratitude journal. They want to recognize positivity, but they sit down and I don't know what to write about. They have no idea. And so the gratitude challenge gives them a prompt of something they should be grateful for and asks them to write a gratitude statement about it. So that's another good priming mechanism to help you recognize reasons why you should be grateful. One of the ones is the sun provides light and warmth to our planet. Think of a reason why you like the sun. And it just makes someone think about something positive, a reason why they like the sun. And that helps them start recognizing the positivity or gratitude.
Yeah, fantastic.
All right. So is there anything we haven't touched on that you would like to talk about?
I think the biggest thing is just take something small away from this conversation and try it, because we talked about a lot of different strategies, a lot of different tools, and everybody's different. So what works for me doesn't necessarily work for you. And you got to try things out and figure out what fits in your life and what makes you feel your best, and just start small and baby steps, towards health and wellness. It's a journey. There's no end game to it. It's something we have to work on every day.
I love that statement. The statement being that there's no one thing that works for everyone, because it's so true. And that's the reason why there's many different, going back to one of your stress reducers, breathing exercises. There's a lot of different ones because you might not like one, and that's okay. It doesn't mean you have to like that one. You ideally can find one you like. Similarly, meditations. If you decide to meditate, there's many different types of meditations out there, as far as guided meditations, story-based meditations, silent meditations. And so again, you find the one you like. And I think that's so important. What Katie said is the fact that there's no one solution for everybody, but you have to try things to find what works for you.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
You also, I'm going to go back one more time on an earlier conversation. You mentioned, this is a note from someone on my team. You mentioned that you like humor. And I think, and I haven't seen this on your Instagram, but someone mentioned some of your Instagram posts have some humor in them. Is that, you try to inject some humor in some of those as well?
Yeah, I tend to on Fridays. I didn't do one yet today, but I try and do a Friday funny, a meme or something related to, stress and how we manage it or can overcome it. And that's always a nice way to end the week, on a laugh.
That's awesome. I'm so happy to hear that. And that's, again, one of the stress reducers Katie mentioned is laughter. So as a recap for stress reducers, I took notes of walks, self-care, which can be many things, breathing exercises, socialization, virtual or in person. Laughter is important. And we kind of even touched on gratitude can help with being a stress reducer. So those are all ways you can help yourself, ideally, to reduce stress. And if you have interest in engaging with Katie or being a part of her one-on-one coaching, as we talked about earlier, you can reach her at Katie Cooper Wellness on Instagram or katiecooperwellness.com, correct?
Yep, that's it.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate having you on today. It was a wonderful conversation, very enlightening, and I love everything you have to say. We will have this published and share the data with you so you can put it on your social media as well.
Great. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for listening. I hope you found that discussion helpful and interesting. If there are any topics you would like to hear discussed, head over to take2minutes.org and use the Contact Us form to submit your suggestions. Also, if you appreciate our content, sign up for an account at take2minutes.org. Subscriptions help us to continue generating new content. Thanks again.